Hey guys, welcome back. So over the last week I've been able to make a little bit of progress with the Regan story. So that's coming along well. I'm on chapter 4 of that. For those who've been following along, it's been detailing some of Regan's early life in the academy as an acolyte training to be a paladin. And so far, not as action-packed as Jonathan's story, and that's kind of by design. I purposely didn't want to make it better than the thing it's trying to like tease to. So a few other things. Well, one big thing that's been interesting working on it for me has been that it takes place sort of in the past, obviously, and because Jonathan's is more or less modern day, Regan has to be like much younger. So for Regan's stuff, this is like 15 years ago roughly. So some of the tech is different, the entertainment's different, and it's kind of fun trying to go back in my mind and remember how things kind of were. It's interesting because you see a lot of shows like Stranger Things on Netflix right now that are doing like the 80s and stuff. There's in the 60s and 70s and even a few like teased at the 90s, since we've got that lovely I love the 90s vibe going on. But the early aughts, late 90s, is this wonderful period that it's fresh in our memory, or at least we kind of like to think it is. And so I'm going back and thinking, okay, so they had the iPhone. Oh, they didn't have the iPhone then. Okay. Oh, wow. I forgot about the Zune. Oh, wow. Did people actually use Ask Jeeves? So, yeah. It's been interesting looking back at some of the stuff. It's in this weird gray period between, what we definitely know. Oh, yeah, that was definitely old, and modern stuff. So it's a neat little part of this that I'm enjoying. But if you checked the marquee, that's not what you're here for, because this last week I happened to have made my way back to the discount theater. So that means it's time for Discount Review. Guaranteed to be at least half as expensive as the other reviews on YouTube. Today's discount review is the BFG. Going into this, I really kind of had to rack my brain a little bit, because I swear I remember reading this growing up. It wasn't a very long book, as I recall. It had a lot of like cutesy parts to it, and it was kind of neat at the time. But I was a pretty small kid. Obviously, I don't have any like books to like grab and show off. This isn't the same feelings I have towards like Alice, but I do have fond memories toward it. And I do have to say, after I watched the movie, I had to go back home and look stuff up to make sure. I swear I remember the book being slightly different, but by God, they got this thing nailed. This thing hit point for point every bit of the book. And I guess it's not all that surprising. Again, it wasn't that big a book, if I remember right. The characterization of the titular BFG, the big friendly giant, he was freaking adorable. He's got this old man cuteness to him, and at the same time this like childlike intellect, and I think it was perfectly captured. I saw Steven Spielberg was attached to this, and all I can think is this had to be the kind of movie that he just had in his back pocket, like someday I want to do this just for me, kind of a thing. It gives off that feel. Somebody involved with the decision-making process on this movie did this movie not because they were expecting a big summer blowout, but they went into it because it was about time that this classic book got its movie treatment and got it done well. I'm not going to say that the characters looked amazing. This wasn't like Avatar level of, oh my god, there's the giant. But They looked good and they felt like a good representation of the admittedly kind of squiggly drawings that were in the original book. Every beat from the original story seems to have been represented very well. There wasn't any like filler, like the BFG having to go off with Sophie and, you know, do some weird rescue or something to kill off like half an hour and stretch out the movie. It hit beat for beat. The young actress that played Sophie, I cannot remember her name to save my life. See how much prep work I do for these? All for you guys. She was adorable too. I feel like she did a really good job. It was obviously live action with CG, and there was just something that was a little off because being what it is, she's oftentimes in the palm of his hand. She's oftentimes on his shoulder, in his pocket. She's oftentimes sharing screen time with the BFG. I was really impressed at how well they held to certain things in the book. The names of all the giants were just as goofy as they were. They took the names directly from the book. They didn't feel the need to like try to make them more palatable to a modern audience. It was these weird, like, you know, blood bottler,
bone cruncher, child chewer, meat dripper, gizzard gulper, butcher boy,
and, you know, these awkward sounding names that in the end just kind of, I don't know, kind of made the movie what it is. So here's where I give a little spoiler alert. Snozcumbers. This is gonna sound a little weird. Speaking of the Snozcumbers, one of the big things that comes from that, of course, is that drink that he makes where the bubbles go downward. And that causes, like, one of the signature silly jokes of it, the whiz popper, which, let's just be honest, whiz popper is a glorious fart that propels you across the room. I remember that having a lot more play in the book, at least like in the BFG's house. When it's shown off in the movie, it's toned down a bit. It's just kind of touched on, and I really thought that was gonna be the end of it. But then he went to Buckingham Palace, and everyone and their dog, literally the Queen's dogs, had some of this stuff. And yeah, it was green rocket fuel farts everywhere. Wonderful movie for little kids. It's just as endearing as the book was, perhaps even more so, just because it is so sweet and so well done. I know I tore Alice apart, and that's because I have a lot of attachment to Alice. It meant a lot, and there was a lot to pick apart. There really was a lot of complexity to Alice. BFG is not a complex movie, and it's not based on a complex story. A little orphan girl gets picked up by a giant. She learns about the bad giants that are picking on the good giant. They get the queen involved, and the queen captures all the giants and puts them on an island. That's it. There's not like a huge story arc. No one is crossing into Mordor to fight a final battle. No one is running down the Death Star trench. It's a pretty cut and dry movie, but my God, is it sweet. I highly recommend it if you're a fan of the original Ronald Dahl book. It's very, very faithful to its source material. And if you've got kids, this is wonderful. They'll be rolling in the aisle, and just overall, it's an adorable movie. Well, that's it for this week. Short one. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up, share it with your friends. A subscribe would make me oh so happy. You know what really makes a fellow like me feel magical? Boop. When you hit the subscribe button. Click it. Come on. Be sure to check me out on Twitter at Matias Tautimez, on Instagram, Matias Tautimez. Find me on Facebook. Check me out on Wattpad at Tautimez. And of course, Beta Book, you can check out the first 7 chapters of my story and give me some feedback if you're interested. And of course, please, my website, matiastautimez.weebly.com. Thanks guys, I appreciate every view. And make sure you have an amazing day.